Good morning. Welcome to this hot Monday. We have a story out of Luke chapter 10 right after this. And welcome back. We're glad that you're with us on this Monday, the 20th, I believe, of July. Time is flying through this month and this year. And please be careful out there. It is going to be a hot one these next few days. That's the way it is for the summer. Hey, there were some times that Jesus's teachings were prompted because of his surroundings, or some talking that was going on, or questions. For example, as far as his surroundings or talking, Luke chapter 15 is the story of the lost sheep, lost coin, and most famous, the parable of the prodigal son. If you read chapter 15, verse 2, you'll find out that is the reason for those three stories, because what's happening is Jesus has been eating with the tax collectors and sinners. And the teachers of the law are muttering, like, who is this man that welcomes these type of people? And so then Jesus tells those parables, those earthly stories with a heavenly meaning, to illustrate his purpose for coming. In Luke chapter 7, we have a story where Jesus is at the home of a Pharisee, and this Pharisee is interrupted during their dinner with a woman of the city who shows up, and she anoints Jesus, and then she begins to cry, and she wipes his feet with her hair, and Simon just is like, man, if this guy's a prophet, if he even knew who this woman was, he wouldn't allow this to happen. But Jesus goes on to teach Simon about her spirit of worship and her attitude of forgiveness, or being forgiven, or seeking that, and that he didn't do that to anybody, that Simon didn't, but this woman did. I share that because in Luke chapter 10, we have probably the second most popular parable that Jesus would tell of a good Samaritan. That story is prompted by an expert of the law who wants to know this answer: who is my neighbor? He wanted to know how to receive eternal life. Jesus asked him a question, and he quoted the Old Testament, which included, love your neighbor as yourself. And Jesus said, very good, go and do it. And then he wants to know who his neighbor is. So let me read for you again how Jesus replied. Jesus said, a man was going down from Jerusalem to Jericho, where he was attacked by robbers. They stripped him of his clothes, beat him, and went away, leaving him half dead. A priest happened to be going down the same road, and when he saw the man, he passed by on the other side. So too a Levite, when he came to the place and saw him, passed by on the other side. But a Samaritan, as he traveled, came where the man was, and when he saw him, he took pity on him. He went to him and bandaged his wounds, pouring on oil and wine, and then he put the man on his own donkey, brought him to an inn, and took care of him. And the next day he took out 2 denarii, that is a couple of days' wages there. And the next day he took out the 2 denarii and gave them to the innkeeper. Look after him, he said, and when I return, I will reimburse you for any extra expense you may have. Over the summer, I have been doing this parable, breaking it down week by week, with some of our local teachers in a weekly email. And these characters, these people in this story, triggered a lesson. So I just want to pass on to you what I had shared with some already in our community. It was Chuck Swindoll. Maybe you've heard of him. He's a famous minister in the Baptist movement, writer. He's wrote a book entitled Strengthening Your Grip. And here's something he said. He said, words can never adequately convey the incredible impact our attitude toward life has. The longer I live, the more convinced I become that life is 10% of what happens to us and 90% of how we respond to it. I believe the single most significant decision I can make on a day-to-day basis is my choice of attitude. It is more important than my past, my education, my bankroll, my successes and failures, fame or pain, what other people think of me or say about me, my circumstances or my position. Attitude keeps me going, or it cripples my progress. It alone fuels my fire, or it assaults my hope. When my attitude is right, there is no barrier too high, no valley too deep, no dream too extreme, no challenge too great for me. In this story, we have some different characters, and just briefly, let me share with you their attitudes. To the expert in the law, the wounded man in Jesus' story was a subject to discuss. To the robbers, the wounded man in the story was someone to use and exploit. To the religious men, the wounded man was a problem to be avoided. To the innkeeper, the wounded man was a customer to serve for a fee. To the Samaritan, the wounded man was a human being worth being cared for and loved for. To Jesus, all of them and all of us were worth dying for. Confronting the needs of others brings out various attitudes in us. Jesus used this story of a Samaritan, an enemy of the Jews. He's the hero of the story. He used the story of this good yet despised Samaritan to teach this expert of the law who the neighbor was, what it meant to care for anyone. Once in a while, we need to hear this story again, this simple, long-time Sunday school story, to be ever mindful of that our neighbor is not just the person next door or who votes like us or roots for the same team we root for or likes the same kind of foods we like. Our neighbor is anyone we come in contact with. And our attitude toward them changes our perspective. Something to think about as we travel through this week. Have a wonderful day. Have a safe week. Like and share. And we'll see you next week on Plugged In.